right. Are we on the internet? We are. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seoul. Today, we are reviewing every single list from the tournament. Oops, sorry. Pressing the wrong buttons here. As you can see, there is currently a tournament game going on between, I think it's Oh My Pony and Himori, which are two players playing Darkborn. There's a lot of people playing Darkborn in this, this tournament. I am one of them. This tournament is the rise of the elves. There are so many elves. It is absolutely ridiculous. Over half of the lists are various types of elves. So I guess skill 4 shooting and just skill 4 in general is being highly, highly valued by the community. I think that makes a lot of sense. It gives you offense against lower skilled units and defense against higher skilled units. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Never mind. Never mind. Okay, we're gonna ditch that. I don't really care about the match that much. Let's just get started. Here's my list. Darkborn Elves. Very heavily reliant on Hex of Ruin plus shooting. We have Frost Ward to keep things that get flanked alive, and or keep the Hydra alive. I went with Hydra rather than Harpies. I tested Harpies extensively, and they tend to just kind of fold. I'm hoping that the Hydra can hold up a little bit better, but there's a lot of things that can kill a Hydra, and it's kind of a waste of points because it's about as hard-hitting as a Chariot for almost twice as many points. It's 10 points under being double the cost of a Chariot. Sorry, 20 points under being double the cost of a Chariot. But that regen and that Fearless are pretty nice to have. Just two big units of Darkborn crossbows. We've got Dreadguard as our line holders. These guys are tough as nails. They don't run away ever, pretty much. And then we have... Oh, you know what? There's noises. Stop watching. I'm just going to disconnect here. Nobody's pinged me. Okay. The Dreadguard are Fearless, with Discipline 9, Skill 5, and they have Halberds, so really good at dealing with big enemy monsters. Unfortunately, this is not a meta of big enemy monsters. Let's look at my first opponent's list. Right after this stream, I'll probably be streaming a game against ATVC, who is also playing Darkborn. He went for a very different list from mine. I like the Darkborn Riders. I think that they're very good, and I think that the 1 point for the Raptor Knights getting Lances is definitely worth it, because Power 6 is really valuable. He's gone entirely into Raptor Knights and also has the Hydra, so he's all about that Defense 5 spam. But then on the other side of things, he just has a big unit of Darkborn Witches with a Banner of Fury. So these are Power 4, making 2 attacks with the front row. That's 14 attacks plus the 7 in the rear. So, what, 21 attacks or something like that? Very, very deadly, but also very vulnerable to shooting. So, I predict that what's going to happen with this match is I'm going to hold back for 2 turns, while absolutely obliterating his infantry, and then his superior cavalry won't be able to drag down my my unit of Dreadguard. That's how I predict that the match is going to go. The Bolt Thrower is an interesting pick. I have another list that I made after reviewing these a little bit, where I have a instead of 1 unit of cavalry, I have a chariot, and then instead of bows, the crossbows, I have a Bolt Thrower. And then that one is much more like melee oriented. But I don't know. I don't really like the witches. I think they die to bows much too easily. So these are probably a bad investment of points in my opinion. But apparently, people disagree with me. Hallister is one of the best players in the game. I think he's consistently in top 10 of PvP. I wonder if he's in the top 10 of PvP right now. We go based on ELO. He is not. Oy vey, Cruz and Inquisitor Reston are both there. Inquisitor Reston has a very nasty list. We'll get to that in a little while. He's not playing Darkborn. Interestingly, if we look at the use of spells, almost everyone is using casters, by the way. I think there's only like 3 lists that aren't using casters as their commander, and all of those lists I don't think are particularly very good. I don't think that they're going to be able to hold up. I think casters are the new meta. They just got buffed, right? They're a lot cheaper than they used to be. They are extremely strong. They're able to basically like either web something in place and give you a massive advantage, or they're able to hex something and kill it. So, where were we? Hallister. Melee infantry Darkborn Elves. Very strange. 2 big units of Darkborn Witches. I mean, if you web me in place and keep me from being able to flank them, they're going to be able to get on top of my bows. Can I kill enough of them before they close to achieve a win? That's really what it comes down to. Having Shroud definitely really helps against bow spam. So we'll see if these Darkborn Elves can hold up against gun lines. Himori has an interesting list. You saw it in action a short time ago. We'll just go and check quickly and see how this game is progressing. 2 big units of cavalry, and he's running them in a narrow block formation. So these are normally run with maximum width, right? You want like 6 wide so that you can maximize your number of attacks. But he's gone for a more maneuverable, just brick formation. So this is much easier to hide behind your own units, which is probably really important, because you don't want these shot to death by like bolt throwers or cannons or whatever. You'll see that that's actually not really a matter of concern, though, when it comes to the meta overall here. I'm just going to disconnect again. Looks like we have another match starting up as well, so it looks like there might be 3 matches going on all at once today once I hop into mine. So it's basically my list, except he has ditched the Hydra for some Spearmen, which is 10 points cheaper, and he has ditched a bunch of crossbows in order to take 2 more each of the cavalry. So very heavily invested into the cavalry. It has less mobility overall than my list because I have a Hydra in addition to these 2 units of cavalry. But he is also committed to Hex of Ruin and spamming crossbows at things. So that is basically what my list's win condition is. I Hex of Ruin something and fire 26 crossbows at it, and then maybe the Darkborn Riders fire their short bows at it as well. Oh My Pony, also playing some Darkborn. We have basically my list, except he's ditched 2 crossbowmen to bring an additional Darkborn Rider, which is a decent change because these have toughness 4. So with defense 4 and the same number of wounds, essentially, also the same number of attacks, essentially you're putting more eggs into the basket of having a harder hitting mobility unit. Because Darkborn Riders are a little bit pillow-fisted for cavalry. They are like light cavalry, so you aren't going to expect them to have the same punch as Raptor Knights. But the Darkborn Riders get a bow. Essentially, he gave up 1 bow to have more overall durability and more flanking threat. So I think that this is decent. I prefer the Dreadguard over Witches for reasons that I've already explained. They have defense 4 rather than defense 3, and Halberds are really good at armor cracking, whereas the Darkborn Witches kind of just do more of what the bows do, right? They hit with strength 3, and that's not really as helpful as it might be. I mean, Frenzy, they make a lot of attacks. You have to eliminate the entire rear row. That's 7 models gone before you can start actually impacting their damage output in a meaningful way. But I've witnessed it many times. Darkborn Witches just melt to bows. And it's even worse against Empire gun lines, which is what we're talking about next. Except this isn't really an Empire gun line. This is an Empire line infantry list. We have a whole bunch of halberds with a war banner, and an Imperial sword unit with war banner, and the captain with a great weapon. So this is one of the few lists that isn't running a caster. Imperial cannon, Imperial dreadnought. I mean, I think these are both like decent units to have, but a single cannon doesn't provide the same threat as a bunch of handguns, especially when you have access to Hex of Ruin. Like, Hex of Ruin plus handguns is really powerful. And I mean, just cheap Imperial Knights is a pretty decent mobility unit. It's not gonna really knock anyone's socks off, but with Lance and Shield they hit power 5, so they're, you know, pretty decent. I'm mostly really concerned for this list against high discipline units. Yes, you have War Banner and you have the captain, so he's basically manipulating all of the combats that he's going to be getting into by +2 combat res, which is pretty strong if you can force enemies to flee. But the problem is that most of the units in the meta have Discipline 8 or better, and a lot of them even have Fearless. So it's going to be pretty difficult to win these combats, even with +2 to combat res, because Imperial Halberds kind of suck against infantry. And yes, they're great against monsters, but they also get eaten by monsters because they're only defense 3. And the Imperial Sword, just only 9 models protecting the captain is... I mean, that's 55 points that you're probably going to lose pretty quickly. Little bit of shooting. This list, in my opinion, probably near the bottom of the barrel in terms of effectiveness. On the other hand, Monolith has an absolutely terrifying list. 2 big units of Imperial handguns with Hex of Ruin and Divine Favor, so he can buff either the accuracy or the devastating damage potential of these units. 2 Imperial Swords to hold the line. This is solid, cheap line infantry. Units of 14 maximizes the number of attacks they can possibly get, because they can run a 7-wide formation. Imperial Dreadnought, always solid, just a defense 7 brick, very hard to bring down. And 10 Imperial Light Cavalry is absolutely disgusting. You're paying under 10 points a model. You're paying under 20 points a model. It's 19 points per model. But those models have 2 wounds each and 2 guns each. So this is 20 plus another 29 guns. Plus the Imperial Dreadnought has the steam cannon. So if there's something that has high defense, like an enemy treant, you can just Hex of Ruin it and probably blow it up with this amount of shooting. This is just an obscene amount of guns overall. And, I mean, the Imperial Light Cavalry, they aren't great at melee, but they are reasonably quick and can exploit flanks, in addition to being great at shooting stuff. So once things close to melee, this list is pretty weak, but hopefully the guns can, like, soften up the enemy so much that they just have no chance at beating you once that melee closes. So, that's the Imperial lists. There's only 2. There's 5 people running Darkborn, and now we're into Abyssal Legions. I wanted to do Abyssal next because we're we're going to be seeing a lot of elves after that. So let's look at something a little bit different. This is really cool. I like Cruz's list a lot. Cruz, #1 rated PvP player, so he knows what he's about. Abyssal Sorcerer with Arcane Web. Interesting that he hasn't gone for Hex. Everyone apparently seems to agree that Web is extremely powerful. I definitely agree with that. I like the Abyssal Chariot mount. It is slightly more expensive than a Manticore and is less mobile than said Manticore, but hits about as hard on the charge and is much more durable with the +1 to saves. So you can keep that Abyssal Sorcerer alive a little bit longer. A second Abyssal Chariot. These are just like really good units, honestly. +1 saves, defense 5, 5 wounds. Very hard to kill. They fight really well even when locked in melee because they have power 4 and skill 4. So they're just overall very solid. Abyssal Hounds because these both cost 1/2 slot. And then Abyssal Knights. Hand weapon and shield with a Banner of Mist. So they can't be shot by cannons and removed that way very easily. And then we have the Archdevil backing everything up. I think the Archdevil is pretty good, but I think that the real winner here is the list that you're going to see at the end. And then I'll show you what I think is an improved version of that list that probably would have wiped the floor with this tournament meta. You know, hindsight is 2020. I would have played Abyssal with the list that I'm going to show you after we're done reviewing the current meta lists. So 2 big units of Northman Axe. Again, cheap line-holding infantry. These are essentially the exact same thing as Imperial Swords. Abyssal Chariot. 3 mobility units here, and an additional one here, and an additional one here. So it's basically just mass mobility units. And then these are pretty much just chaff to screen them from shooting. That's basically what the Northman Axe are serving in their function here, is protecting your stuff from being shot a lot. Especially the Archdevil really needs to be careful. This thing dies very easily, even though it's tougher than like most single model mobility units. It's also a huge investment of points, and you really need it to get involved in at least like 2 combats for it to make its points back. UK Rocky, another top contender, also playing Abyssal Legion. He's brought the Manticore. I like the Manticore. Flyers are really good. It is kind of squishy. It's a scalpel unit. You have to be very careful with it. So far, both running Web. Makes sense when your entire game plan is mobility based. You want to be able to root enemy mobility units in place and side charge them. Or root them in place for 2 turns with the Arcane Web, just stun locking them, and then have your mobility units pick apart every other part and then deal with their mobility units. So we've got the Manticore, we've got Abyssal Knights. Everyone liking the Abyssal Knights. I think that they are very good. And interestingly, Dragonspawn. Dragonspawn came up a lot more frequently in this tournament than in past tournaments. Nobody used them before. Maybe there's something that I don't know. I still don't think that these are very good, but they do offer an additional mobility unit. Interesting thing about UK Rocky's list is he has almost no infantry. He has 1 unit of Northman Axe, probably just to screen the Manticore and the Archdevil. And then I would imagine everything else is probably going to sit on the flanks. The Dragonspawn are going to sit on one flank, the Abyssal Knights and the Abyssal Chariot on another flank, and then maybe the Hounds will also hide behind the Northman Axe. And then the 2 Flyers sit directly behind it, so that they can avoid getting shot. Because the Abyssal Hounds just die to shooting super badly as well. Tiger D20, also playing Abyssal, has gone for Northman Horse spam, which is interesting. 2 units of Northman Horse with Javelins. Very cheap. He's definitely like dumped a lot of the power in his mobility in order to bring an Archdevil and 2 units of Abyssal Warriors. Abyssal Warriors also more popular in this tournament than I have seen in previous ones. I think 2 units of Abyssal Warriors is very, very hard to deal with. These things are super tanky. I think the main problem is that they have such low numbers that they're actually probably just going to lose combat a lot, because only 10 attacks, even with skill 4 and power 4 or power 5 on the charge, is not really that significant. And I think that you could definitely make an argument to replace the Archdevil by taking, I don't know, more Abyssal Warriors and like upgrading this to Abyssal Knights. I don't like this list very much from Tiger T20. I think that these are really tough to bring down, but they're not going to win combat and drive people off the way that you probably want them to. Shazo Kaizel. He has played his match against... was it Cruz? No, he played his match against the next list that we're going to be looking at, and the other list won. Shazo has brought the Manticore. I love the Manticore. Great flyer. Abyssal Warriors. Huge unit of Abyssal Warriors with Banner of Swiftness. Really weird decision to just give them mobility. And a massive unit of them. 17. Only 12 can fit in the front 2 ranks for Abyssal Warriors. So he's taken 5 additional, essentially, ablative wounds to keep this unit alive. 4 Dragon Spawn. Big, punchy, pretty tough. They do have 4 wounds each. So these are very hard to bring down. But they are insanely expensive. They're 12 points more than a Troll. Which is... like, it's arguable if these are even that much better than Trolls. Because regeneration is really good. Then we have a pretty classic combo here. We have Abyssal Chariot and Abyssal Hounds, and then Northman Horse instead of Knights, probably so that he can afford this massive unit of Abyssal Warriors. The Northman Horse are pretty decent. Like, they're very cheap. The main thing that makes Northman Horse good is that they're super cheap. I don't like them that much. They don't really hit hard. They're only power 4 on the charge. They're essentially like really crappy Darkborn Riders, but they cost only a little bit less than Darkborn Riders for worse skill and worse discipline. Otherwise, their stat lines are basically identical, except the Darkborn Riders have a much better gun. They've got short bows rather than javelins, which is much more range, and also skill 4 means that they hit much more often. So, I don't love Shazo's list. I think that he's too elite on his infantry, and not elite enough on his mobility units. Inkvisitor Reston, another top-ranked player, has taken double knights. And I don't know how nobody else picked up on this. Maybe he's just brilliant. I certainly didn't think of it when I was doing a bunch of list building, theory crafting, and stuff like that. Abyssal Knights are really good. They're extremely expensive, but they are... like, with hand weapon and shield, they cost as much as a Troll. They don't hit as hard as a Troll. You can also compare them to Croxagors, right? They are the same points cost. They hit less hard. They have less wounds, so they're arguably less tanky even with the +1 to saves. And they don't hit as hard. They're only power 4 with their hand weapons, and then on the charge they hit power 5. Whereas both of the other ones are power 6. But they have skill 4, and they have discipline 8. And the +1 to saves. So it's arguable whether Abyssal Knights are really good. We will see whether or not they are. I think it's certainly worth running 2 units of them in 750. You kind of have the points to run them. So I would recommend trying it out if you want to just play some 750 for fun. I think that this is probably one of the best lists in the tournament. Are we back? Sorry about that. My OBS crashed. So I think it's going to be between Inquisitor Reston and Cruz. Maybe UK Rocky as well. UK Rocky's also a great player. But Abyssal Chariot, Abyssal Hounds, and then some cheap chaff to guard units from getting shot, like your Abyssal Hounds, for example. And then 3 Dragon Spawn. So pretty much everyone running Dragon Spawn in the Abyssal Legions. That's interesting. That's a new thing. That wasn't a meta thing a while ago. So I want to just show you quickly. I think that this would have been a pretty big improvement to his list. I like Abyssal Warriors instead of the Dragon Spawn. I think Abyssal Warriors with 2 hand weapons are extremely deadly. Power 4, skill 4, 2 attacks each. You don't need a big unit, right? You just need to take the 10 models, because these guys only have half the combat efficacy. You're still making 12 attacks once the back rank is destroyed. They're very tanky, and they hit harder than a unit of 14 Northman Axe by far. Now, they are quite a bit more expensive, but they're also going to hold up a lot better to, especially shooting. Like, bows aren't going to do much to these guys, even with Hex of Ruin up, because they're still making 4-up saves. Abyssal Knights with the Abyssal Sorcerer. I gave him Unyielding because he does have 3 wounds with Abyssal Armor, so re-rolling those saves once the Abyssal Knight retinue has been killed will keep this guy alive for a significant amount of time. And then, yeah, the classic Abyssal Chariot and Hounds combo. And then, instead of taking Great Weapons on the second unit of Abyssal Knights, I've just kept it to Hand Weapon and Shield, because Great Weapons cost 3 freaking points on these guys. Like, it's so expensive. And I don't think it's necessarily better. Yeah, you hit a little bit harder, but the defense 5 with the +1 to saves is really powerful. So, I just wanted to show you that. I think that if I was to have foresight into the tournament meta, I would run this instead of Darkborn. Next, we have Elves. We are back to Elves again, ladies and gentlemen. It's Deepwood in this case. There's a couple of Deepwood lists. Tazik89 is running some Dryads with a Treant. He's got a Chariot, he's got a big unit of Archers, and he's got a Griffin. And then 1 unit of Deepwood Guard with a Banner of Mist to protect them from shooting. I feel like the Deepwood Guard are really just chaff, so instead of that banner, I might have gone for an extra Dryad, just to keep this unit. Like, Dryads are just really great at like sticking on an objective, and they pretty much never run away. If you're going to invest in them, I think it's worth getting like 11 or 12 models, just so that they win combat pretty regularly. But yeah, I like this list. I think that it would be straight up improved by taking some points out of the commander. Right? We don't need the Deepwood Noble. I don't think that this is a good investment of 90 points. The Hunter's Bow is pretty decent with Cruelty, but like, this is not going to like utterly destroy anyone. And you could just have a Spellcaster with Web, which is going to be extremely powerful. And instead of the 90 points in this, you could have like an Eagle or something, right? You sacrifice a few points, maybe the Banner of Mist and this into a caster, and then you get an Eagle along with the Deepwood Chariot, and you have a second flyer to flank people. I think the Treant is a good investment. I think the Treant's super solid, though. Both Deepwood lists that are being run in the tournament are running Treants, because I think that they're one of the better giants in the game. They're super tanky, very hard to bring down. Skill 4 means that they hit more reliably against low tier trash mobs that, you know, people will just stick the tree into fighting a unit of, you know, axemen or something to tie him up for a few turns. Deepwood Druid on a Griffin. Again, think it's definitely improved. Vitality is probably a complete waste of points because the Griffin is going to die long before the Druid ever does most of the time. I would probably rather see another Dryad or something, you know, instead of that Vitality investment. 15 Deepwood Guard with a Banner of Valor to... Wait, what does Banner of Valor do again? I think it's... Yeah, you reroll failed discipline tests. That's reasonable, I suppose. Just keep them holding the line a little bit better. And then, yeah, we've got the Giant Eagle and the Deepwood Chariot. I mean, this is basically this list, except less bows and a Druid. And then it took an Eagle for a second mobility unit. So, I like this one a lot better. I think that this is definitely more viable. Then, we're on to Elven Conclaves. Now, Danik is currently working on updating his list. This guy has had to update his list like 10 times, and he keeps making illegal lists every single time. It's so funny. He brought like 2 chariots in his most recent revision. Regardless, you can't take City Guard in this. You can't take more than 1 unit of City Guard in this tournament because they're limit of 1 for the Elven Conclaves faction. He keeps trying to take City Guard and it's not working out. So, this is going to end up being probably very similar to a lot of the other lists that are being run currently. All hail. Very good player. He's definitely up there in terms of PvP rankings. Elf Mage, Arcane Web, Frost Ward. Great combo of spells. The Griffin, just always useful to have an extra flyer. 2 Giant Eagles. I personally prefer Chariots to Eagles, so I would have probably run 1 Chariot, but that's fine. Elf Bolt Thrower helps to force enemies to keep their heads down. Elf City Guard are really, really points-efficient bow infantry, because they get defense 4 and a spear for essentially 1 point, because they're 11 points versus the 10 of archers, so I think City Guard are definitely very powerful. And then a big unit of Weapon Masters with great weapons. I prefer Halberds, but Weapon Masters are actually pretty good for 11 points. Rerolling all your failed hits is almost like doubling your attack output. It's pretty dang powerful. Dragon Knights have the same ability, so they're obviously very good. He's paid the extra points for the Lances, so these are power 6 on the charge. Very deadly unit, for real. I'm not a huge fan of Bolt Throwers, by the way, but I think that this is a decent investment. Like, you probably can't afford the 100 points for the archers if you're running 2 elite infantry units. So this is overall a pretty good, just throw on, you know, force enemy cavalry to keep their heads down kind of deal. Ouijas, also known as Piotr, I think, on the Discord server. Elf Mage, 9 Weapon Masters with Halberds. Battle Line, 10 Weapon Masters with Halberds. Something tells me that people really like Weapon Masters. I think they're also quite good. Divine Favor, Arcane Web. He's gonna Divine Favor the City Guard to make them better at shooting. And Arcane Web things in place. Then charge it with the mobility units. 2 Giant Eagles. Unit of Dragon Knights. Hand Weapon and Shield on these ones. No Lance. I think that these are fine at Power 5. They probably don't really need the Lances. But it's not like a terrible investment in points. I don't like that almost all of his infantry units are very small. He doesn't really have a lot of numbers. I will say that he does have 4 infantry units, which is more than I've seen from most elf lists. So he does have a lot of them. They're just all very weak. And that's a problem because elves almost always rally. So putting extra models into units means that they're more likely to deny your opponent points by having like 1 or 2 models left at the end of the game and just rallying. So, I don't know. He's definitely spread himself a little bit thin, especially with the Elf Mage. Like, I feel like these Weapon Masters are going to get shot really badly, and then the Elf Mage will explode before he ever gets a chance to use all 4 of his spells. Another Elf Conclave list. We have, this time, a more combined arms. We've got a unit of Elf Archers, unit of Elf Spears, and then a big unit of City Guard. Arcane Web and Shadow Bolt this time. He's just going for the straight-up shooting rather than buffing his own shooting, which is, I think, maybe not great. I actually really like Divine Favor a lot. Boosting up, say, like, a unit of Elf City Guard once they get into melee, and putting them at skill 5 against other elves means that they hit on 3s, and suddenly you turn that combat well into your favor, which is definitely really helpful. Anyways, regardless, we've got the Chariot with some bows on it. You got an extra 5 points laying around, right? So why not use it on some bows? And we've got the Hand Weapon and Shield with Banner of Mist on the Dragon Knights. He's investing in keeping them safe, even though he has a lot of infantry so that he can screen his 3 mobility units. Having the Dragon Knights be able to go out and not get shot super badly definitely seems like a good investment to me. Then we've got Billstone, Elf Mage, big unit of archers. I love this. Protect the mage. Keep him safe. Keep the shooting going. And make sure that Elf Mage gets to use all 4 of his spells. We have some incredibly deadly ranged fire here. This is literally just how many bows can you possibly bring in a list while still having reasonable mobility units? And the answer is apparently 14 Elf Archers, 12 Elf Archers, and 15 City Guard. I feel like this would be better run in Dark Elves with Hex, but we can't take City Guard. So, I don't know, Darkborn can't escape the troop tax, right? If you want to bring the maximum number of bows, you gotta go with Elves and not rely on Hex and instead rely on Arcane Web to keep your gun line safe. Make sure that the enemy mobility units cannot exploit your weaknesses. If it was me, I would absolutely swap one of these Giant Eagles for a Chariot with bows because it gives a little bit of extra shooting and you have 5 points left. Why wouldn't you just do that? So Billstone, that would be my suggestion to improve this list. Otherwise, I think it's incredibly good. I think the War Banner on the Dragon Knights is probably a waste. War Banner is what, +1 combat score? That's completely pointless for these guys. Dragon Knights never lose combat. They pretty much always just hit almost every single attack and destroy stuff. I would absolutely have swapped this for a Banner of Mist, but I probably would have instead taken more archers instead of the War Banner, right? You can still keep your 2 Giant Eagles, and then you drop the War Banner, and you just max out on Elf Archers. Straight up. You can just take 3 more Elf Archers in the other unit and bring... What would that be? 30... 44 bows. 44 bows is a lot of shooting. Especially with Divine Favor able to buff it up. So we're down to the nitty-gritty here. We've got a couple of lists that are not Elves and not Abyssal. We have Semifreedy running the Goatman Raiders. He's got the Minotaur Lord here. Minotaur Lord, pretty interesting pick. Very minimal investment into him. 3 Minotaurs as his retinue. He's got a couple of extra dudes backing him up. And then we've got the Minotaur Lord himself. Everyone's running 2 hand weapons, so this is making 4 attacks for each model times 4 is 16 attacks with Frenzy and Power 4. That's and Skill 4. So hitting on 3s against the very few units that have 3 skill in this meta. Then he's got 2 big units of Mongrel Spears. I like these a lot. I think that these are a great unit to just shove in your opponent's face. They're kind of forced to charge into the spears because you're going to be jamming them off of the objective. So I think that these are definitely very good. Feral Hounds, Raiding Chariot, and then he's gone for a Giant. I personally like Harpies as an extra mobility unit, but the Feral Giant definitely has some good staying power, and he's gone without the Boulder. So I think people have determined that the Boulder is basically useless now, even at 15 points. One-shot Boulder is not really that useful. Mongrel Spears. I think that the problem is that with Spear units, you really want Primal Fury because it's a lot of attacks. And he doesn't have the Shaman. I think that the Shaman is really powerful in Beastmen, because their units are so cheap that being able to buff their quality by giving them buffing spells is really, really good. So I don't love the Minotaur Lord. I also don't love the unit that the next person used, the Goatman Longhorn, with 12 Ibex Warriors. This is basically Orc Brutes that are in your face on turn 1 with slightly better discipline. He's taken True Strike and Unyielding. This model only has 3 wounds. I don't think that it's worth the Unyielding. I know I took it on the on this list, but that's more to keep the Sorcerer alive so that he can make sure to get all of his spells off, rather than because I think it's, you know, necessary. Like, I don't think it's necessary to keep the Goatman Longhorn alive as long, right? You don't need that Unyielding, even with the defense 4 that he has. I don't think it's worth it. I also would have taken 1 less Ibex Warrior, because the maximum that you can fit in 2 rows is 11, with the Goatman Longhorn leading. I would have rather had maybe 1 big unit of Mongrel Spears instead of the extra Ibex Warrior. But he's gone with the Harpies instead of the Giant, like I said. I think Harpies are one of the better units that you have access to as Beastmen. Again, I probably wouldn't run the Longhorn, but he does have 3 units of infantry that are going to be on top of you immediately, along with 2 chariots. Then the Harpies and Feral Hounds will be on you pretty quick as well. I've run a list very similar to this one, and I think it's pretty good. I think that without the Shaman, this list definitely suffers a lot. I don't think the Longhorn with the Ibex Warriors is going to make up for the power that Primal Fury on your crappy units can bring. Captain Toad is running Rats. He's the only person running Rats. And I think that this list is absolutely terrifying. 8 long rifles are just always a huge threat to anything. Even single wound infantry don't like getting shot by these, but especially multi-wound cavalry, especially Dark Riders, who make 5-up saves against this, are terrified of long rifles. And their ability to hide behind the line infantry while poking shots between the gaps between the units is very, very powerful. 18 Skulkers with Throwing Stars, lots of javelin power here, able to just chip a few wounds off of enemy infantry or cavalry units. Legionaries with Cursed Standard, very, very powerful. I like this a lot. I think that the Cursed Standard, giving these a lot of attacks for 1 turn, means that they can absolutely just completely crush something, especially with the Doom Bell buff up. If you can give the Legionaries Doom Bell and Pop Cursed Standard, they're making at worst probably 14 attacks with rerolls, and the best save you can get against them is 4s. This is terrifying. This is a terrifying unit. The Banner of Fury hand weapon conscripts means that they charge with power 5. and then you get Frenzy on 14 attacks with power 5. That is horrific. And then finally, the Skulkers. I mean, Skulkers are always super nasty. If you have shooting, it should probably go into the Skulkers. They are probably the nastiest unit here. The Legionaries are a problem, but the Skulkers having 2 attacks base, I don't know. I mean, all of these are problematic, but the Skulkers just die more easily to bows, so I'd probably focus on the Skulkers. And then classic, Warlock with Doombell, obviously. And then Ratkin Alphas, I think, are pretty decent, like, heavy hitters. They have power 6 on the charge, which is pretty impressive. And then you can give them Frenzy with the Doombell. And they also have Swift, so they're very fast. Like, movement 13 is pretty significant. That's almost as fast as cavalry, right? These are only 1 inch slower than a unit of Imperial cavalry or a unit of Raptor Riders. So, I think overall, very, very solid Vermintide list. I think he might be over-invested into banners. I would have rather seen just more models, like body spam. But, you know what? He's going for something a little bit different. It makes sense to try something out in a 750 meta. Finally, we have Spare Player. If someone like drops out of the tournament or something like that, this list will be played by Hallister. It's a weird one. Necromancer, Raised Dead, Hex of Ruin. 2 big units of Skeleton Spears, 21 spears each. And then Raised Dead allows you to add, what is it? 2d3 plus 1, I think? Or 1d3 plus 3 models back to a skeleton unit. And then 20 freaking White Guard with Great Weapons and Banner of Mist. These guys are going to kick a lot of ass in melee, and they're going to be very hard to bring down because there's so many of them. Defense 4 isn't as good as Defense 5, but these guys are probably going to win combat most of the time. They have a really solid stat line. I think the main problem with White Guard is that they're really slow. 6-inch movement means that it's going to take them a very long time to get into combat. Meanwhile, your Fellbats and your Skeleton Spears are going to get absolutely overwhelmed, even by crappy, cheap enemy infantry. Like, literally, Northman Axe will beat the pants off of a Skeleton Spear in almost double the capacity. I will say that with Hex of Ruin, that can definitely be heavily altered. But we've got 3 units to screen, and we have three units that need to be screened. And the Zombie Giant has a great tank. It can stick around for a very long time. And if you put it into the front of enemy units, you can really just force them to lose combat, because it's very hard to hit this thing, and it's very hard to deal any damage to it. And then just 2 units, 3 Fellbats. Great mobility units, just little cheap flyers that are going to flank people. So, that's all of the lists. What do I think of the tournament meta? It's really weird seeing people play a lot of elite melee infantry. The overarching pattern that I am seeing here is either gun lines with chaff or very elite mobility units plus chaff to hold the center. So that seems to be the meta, and certainly spellcasters are the meta. They've just recently gotten a massive buff because now they cost roughly like 30 to 50% less than they used to when people were running spellcasters previously. You had to pay for the spells, now you don't, but the base cost of the caster has increased to offset that a little bit, but you're definitely paying a lot less points for them now. And yeah, it's just pretty interesting. I'm betting on an Inquisitor Reston for a win here. I think that he's playing into a meta that has a lot of bows, and he has nothing that is vulnerable to bows except for the Abyssal Hounds. And those can be screened pretty easily and brought in as like a late game flanker once the enemy has been thoroughly engaged in melee by 2 units of Abyssal Knights and a big unit of, well, it's not a big unit, but it is a unit of Dragon Spawn, plus an Abyssal Chariot. This is all extremely tanky. It holds up really well against shooting. I will say that his line infantry is a little bit lackluster. He doesn't exactly have a lot of staying power here, but that is not really that big of a deal when you have so much mobility. I'm still confident. I still think that I can deal with pretty much any list with my Hex Bows and my excellent Darkborn Dreadguard Halberds that are going to hold the center for me. I haven't really tested out the Hydra yet, so I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. Hang on, someone just pinged me. ATVC is here when I want to play. Alright, so I'll probably take a little break and then be back in like, I don't know, 15 minutes or so to play some Soul. Other lists that I think have a good chance at winning. Which one was it? The Monolith Empire list, very, very deadly. Lots of handguns plus Hex, plus Divine Favor. All really, really good stuff. Love the Imperial Dreadnought. I think it's a great tanky unit. Who else? Himori and Hallister both have excellent lists. I think that the Witches are probably going to not serve them as well as they might have. I think Himori has one of the better lists. Let's go see if he won his game. Let's have a look at this. Billstone? Yeah, Monolith obviously won. This is what I'm talking about. This is a very hard list to deal with. It has so much shooting. Like, it will just melt you before you can even get into combat with it. And then LeBaron and Athelin. Holy! Well, apparently the other Imperial list also absolutely crushed the Deepwood list. It's not necessarily surprising. Those were 2 new players. What happened to... What was the list that we were looking at? We were looking at Himori. Himori hasn't posted the results of their game. Whatever, it's fine. I feel like Himori might have won, but I'm not sure about that. Himori is pretty good. I think I also really like Oh My Pony's list. I know it's literally my list with an extra Darkborn Rider. I think that this is very solid. Darkborn Riders could use an extra little bit of oomph in terms of like when they charge. I've noticed that they don't really win combat when they charge frontally. UK Rocky, also very solid. Love the Manticore, love the Abyssal Knights here. And who else? Shazo, I don't think is going to win. Inquisitor Restone, I think really is like the shoe-in. I don't think that he's going to have any problems. Out of the Elven Conclave lists, where's the one with all the shooting? I think I like this one the best. Billstone has a very solid list here. Really hard to deal with this many bows, honestly. It's just so many bows. Like, if I fought against this, I'm gonna Hex of Ruin the City Guard and blast them to pieces, yes. But at the same time, my entire gun line is melting under the pressure of Divine Favor shots, and Arcane Web is going to keep my mobility units off of his shooting. So, overall, pretty hard to deal with. I hope I don't have to fight Billstone, and I hope I don't have to fight Inquisitor Restone. Those are the 2 lists that I'm super worried about. I think almost everything else I have a reasonable chance at beating. Anyways, thanks for watching, everyone. Remember to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Helps out immensely. Check out my Ko-fi if you want to support me directly. I'll be back at probably 20 after to play my game. The first game of the tournament against this list right here, ATVC. And I'm fairly confident. I'm fairly confident that we can win as long as, you know, I don't get some crazy bad dice. And as long as I don't let myself get exposed and arcane webbed and like side charged. Anyways, we'll talk to you guys real